Good evening and hello everyone. Thank you very much for joining us. We're thrilled today to have Ryan Parson with us because he is going to talk about really exciting topic, which even I'm looking forward to hear more: stress testing, or how to stress test your portfolio. Ryan, take it away.
Hey, thank you very much, Alina, for having me. It's always a pleasure to be here with yours and Mike's listeners and to be able to share and serve your investors that you do such a great job taking care of. So thanks again for having me back, Alina. It's great to be here with you. So I'm going to share my screen here. So hopefully you all can see that. Alina, is that showing okay?
Perfect.
On the screen? Excellent. If it gets a little wonky or something, be sure to let me know. I know the technology when we're doing this sometimes can change a little bit. So anyway, I want to make sure that that screen is showing okay there for you. And Alina, you're seeing the whole screen, correct? The whole PowerPoint slides. Perfect. Very, very good. So appreciate again the opportunity to be here tonight. Mike and Alina have always done a great job at educating their investors and really fostering a community where we can share more information with each other and about each other, how to help really preserve our wealth in this day and age, Alina. And it's, with so much political and economic and social change happening right in front of us in real time at a pace that is faster than I've ever known it to be. Being able to have and find solace in what I call your optimal financial world can seem to be a little bit out of reach. So I appreciated you and Mike asking me to talk about this topic specifically, and really what we'll share about why you stress test your wealth given these massive economic, political, and social changes that are happening. So just sharing some thoughts, high-level views, no investment advice tonight, and obviously any professional advice you might need, legal, tax, investment, or any other types of professional services that you seek out. Well-qualified professional to be able to serve you. So, Alina, I just wanted to give a little bit of some framework here about, leading into this discussion about stress testing as we define it. But what the framework, I think, for this discussion tonight is really what the wealthy want today. And I'm going to give some examples here, but generally speaking, where the families that we work with and serve are already wildly successful. They've got successful real estate portfolios, alternative investment portfolios. They own businesses. They've really already created their wealth. And by the time a family comes to us, the biggest thing is, how do I preserve it? In other words, I can't afford to lose it. If I were an entrepreneur or a business, I took all the risk I wanted to take to build the business. At that point, I sold it, I had a liquidity event, I don't want to start over. So we really work with families that are already financially successful. And from there, they're really wanting to have a real, true life of significance. And even if they are still operating their small business or working in corporate America, wherever or however they've created their wealth, but they really want to live a life of significance, having meaningful impact on those that matter most to them, maybe their charities, and or maybe really, even to an extent, are really trying to make a big footprint on the world, depending on what their aspirations are. But that life of significance, living their best life, and they're already financially free by most people's accounts. They're already successful. So it becomes about preserving the wealth. And when you think about preserving the wealth, sometimes that sounds like it is it's done. I'm just trying to hold on to what I got. I'm trying to not lose it. You aren't trying to lose it, but sometimes it becomes with a mindset of scarcity versus a mindset of abundance. And families we work with they don't want to lose what they have, but they still have a mindset of abundance. So while they're trying to preserve their wealth and not lose it, they also realize that having to plan around the other components to preserve the wealth, even grow the wealth, make sure it produces the level of income that they want, becomes a lot of moving parts. And it's part of that process, Alina, that you and I were talking about before we went live here and started the recording, is this idea of a virtual family office. And to really have an optimal financial world, you have to think like you are a super wealthy family. And regardless of your level of wealth, all of the same components, whether you're a $500 million net worth family or a $5 million net worth family, the components of it are essentially the same. And so when I say, Alina, we operate and think about as a virtual family office, it's to encompass all things about your wealth, from advanced planning issues, and I'll talk more in detail about as we get into the stress testing element. It's the wealth preservation, investment selection issues, risk issues, and then helping manage all the key financial advisors that you have in your life, like you and Mike are, with investors that entrust their capital to you. You are a financial advisor to them, and all of their other deal sponsors that they have, their accountant, their estate planning attorney, their insurance agents, their bankers, their financial advisors, their brokers, whatever the case may be, Alina, all of these people, all of these other professionals come into the picture, would make up this idea of the virtual family office. So implementing implementing your plan, reviewing the plan, constantly improving, constantly reviewing the plan and evaluating it is how you preserve the wealth today, given these massive economic, political, and social changes. So one of the big elements, Alina, when you get into this idea of stress testing is really starting to identify where there may be holes or gaps or even problems in your holistic wealth plan. So in other words, you want to be able to identify issues before they become massively big problems. So that's part of the element of stress testing, is knowing where the problems might be lying at, either known or unknown, or however many few or however many there are that may be existing in your ability to stay financially free for the long haul. So that's a big part of it. And then a second big part of it, especially over the last, 12, 13 years, Alina, since we really had a long, good market, especially with real estate investments since the last market correction of 2008. A lot of investors have become successful without having a clearly defined plan, because the market has just performed overall pretty well for them. And what you have a plan for is to protect for the unknowns, or to help identify risk points when things go wrong. And if you don't have a plan, even in a very good economic time, you're really setting yourself up for a really rude awakening when things get really bad and very tumultuous. And so part of stress testing is being able to understand what your holistic plan is and looks like, and can it get you there and truly keep you financially independent for the long haul. So part of that plan and part of that stress testing has to do, when I talk about and think through the idea of a virtual family office in this case, Alina, and realizing if you are successful with your wealth already, however you've been successful, one of the biggest elements of planning has to do with enhancing your wealth, meaning enhancing your passive income with as much after-tax net income as you possibly can, and understanding what your income tax situation. See, a lot of times what happens when it comes to tax is that we expect our CPAs to be, help lower our taxes. And they can, and there's strategies and techniques to do that. But tax is typically looking backwards and telling you what already happened, and therefore this is the amount of tax you owe. Having a tax plan and a tax strategy looking forward is a significant way that you enhance your wealth by enhancing or maximizing your after-tax income. So this tax mitigation is really a big issue for the wealthy, Alina, that has gotten, certainly a lot more, even in the most recent days here, given what's happening with our politicians in Washington right now, with IRAs and so much going on there. So being ahead of that is really, really critical. And part of stress testing for tax is looking for kind of a worst case scenario with tax and going, how will my wealth withstand that? Because you can't wait until it's already happened. You have to be proactive with your tax strategy and really understanding that tax mitigation happens at a holistic wealth level, not at an individual asset level. And that's a big thing we see in stress testing, that we think tax issues are solved at individual investment issues, and it really isn't. It's done at your overall wealth level. So that's part of the wealth and wealth enhancement piece of this that is really critical to when you start to engage in a stress testing exercise to see where can some additional wealth be created at. The second big element, Alina, the bulk of the families that we serve today have aspirations to leave something for their heirs. It might be their children, it might be their grandchildren, but generally speaking, they're trying to transfer their assets so that they continue to be able to serve the family. Again, regardless of the size of your estate, it's really trying to promulgate the values of the family, the values of the investors that created the wealth to begin with. So having a very strategic wealth transfer plan in place and understanding, again, especially with everything that's happening in the world here today, stress testing how those assets will transfer and continue to perform, if that's your desire, is a really significant component and a significant area of concern for a lot of high net worth families here today. The third big element of this, Alina, when we talk about stress testing and where are some of the cracks in your ability to stay financially independent and preserve your wealth, has to do with asset protection, or more specifically, overall wealth protection. So high net worth families really want to be protected from having their wealth unfairly and unjustly taken through them. Examples, Alina, are through lawsuits, and even more modern day things that destroy wealth, like wire fraud. If you're a victim of wire fraud and you have money, wired out of your account that wasn't your direction. Identity theft is another thing that can impact your wealth. And so for high net worth families, understanding what their wealth protection, that part or that element of their holistic financial plan, is something that, as we've stress tested this with our existing clients, there's just a lot of cracks potentially that show up because there's just new threats to our wealth that really didn't exist 5 and 10 years ago, or nothing that we were talking about as broadly as we do today. So when we talk about wealth protection, Alina, it's so many of these other things based on the modern day that we live in that can destroy our wealth, that, is things that appear to be, just from threats that, beyond investment threats and risks of investing in general, so to speak. So that's a big thing about wealth protection today. And then most of the families that we serve, and really all of us, Alina, and I know you and Mike, at a company level, even, have a very philanthropic mindset and the idea of giving back and serving. And for most of our families, they share and are in alignment with that too, and that they want to be able to magnify their charitable gifts to their current charities that they feel compelled to support, and even future charities, or grow those charitable donations, so to speak, into the future. And so being able to have a plan that allows you to live a life of significance, that allows empowering others, giving back to others. A lot of families, are doing it at the level that they're called to do it and feel that they can be doing it. But when it comes to a stress testing situation, and especially, believe it or not, some of the favorable structures and even the tax laws that still exist today, can be able to help you magnify that without it significantly changing your overall income. And so there's a lot of really cool things that can be done. And when you stress test for that, you can generally start to see more of those opportunities a lot more clearly, where they weren't necessarily as vivid before. So all of that is in mind with those kind of those planning areas that really all of us as high net worth investors, Alina, want to magnify and be better with and be better protected against. And then there are the investments, a piece of all of this and what we call wealth preservation, in that how do you really increase the probability of hitting your desired targets? And when it comes to investing, especially with alternative and real estate investments, it starts to become a greater exercise in understanding what are the taxes of impacts of alternatives. What is the impact of inflation on your real estate and alternative investments? What are just the impact of costs of investing? There's always costs of investing. There's management fees, there's acquisition fees, there's, revenue split. I mean, there's all kinds of things that get built in to all different kinds of investments for that. Those are all costs, effectively to the investors. And so understanding how your portfolio encompasses all of those elements, not to mention your risk tolerance, not to mention your time frames, not to mention your diversification strategy of all the different types of real estate deals you like to do, and alternatives, oil and gas. I mean, the universe is so large today to try to pick and identify and choose the types of strategies that are appropriate for you and your situation. And so this, stress testing, a common a thing that we see today with stress testing is different types of deals that were in their portfolio were great for them 5 or 10 years ago and aren't so great today. And if you don't stress test from time to time, you don't necessarily see some of those issues because it's just not as readily apparent. And stress testing is a great way to make sure that you have the greatest probability of your investment portfolio performing at an optimum level. So all of that, to say when you look at stress testing your wealth is really you need to minimize missing too many good opportunities and minimize taking too many of the wrong opportunities. and that's not just with investments, Alina. That is how you view tax, how you view wealth transfer, how you view wealth protection, how you view your investment selections, how you look at your charitable aspirations. Because for most successful families, those that we serve anyway, it's not about having to make massive big changes. It's just minimizing making wrong decisions and making sure you just take advantage of enough of the right opportunities as they come along, because the only thing that we can control really is our return expectations in our portfolio and the level of risk we're willing to take. Otherwise, the market is largely controlling the rest of that from an investment perspective. So being able to make sure you don't miss too many appropriate opportunities is a really big element. So as I mentioned at the beginning of this, leading into this stress testing is really, what we've learned, serving high net worth families for more than 20 years now, Alina, is that it really is this idea of the virtual family office has a lot more context today for the affluent families, that we serve. So even if you're under the $30 million net worth range, let's just give it an example. You're anywhere from say $3 to $30 million. In order for us to preserve that wealth, or for any of us in that range of wealth, we have to think like and understand how a family with $100 million or $500 million thinks about preserving their wealth. And that's what leads us to the virtual family office and really this virtuous cycle of managing wealth. And so these elements that you see on the screen here, Alina, I kind of touched on all of these here in the last 15, 20 minutes or so. So I'm not going to dwell on any of these, but the idea is, in order to maintain your wealth, to truly preserve your wealth, you're constantly doing these things. So when I say profiling, it's really understanding what you as a family, it's important to you. What are your values? What are your goals? And successful families are constantly profiling themselves, asking themselves these questions. Maybe what has changed about our values and our goals? So that's a constant process that really never stops. It's not a one and done thing. And then your professional support network, sometimes you're focused more on that, meaning all of your deal sponsors, your accountants, your tax advisors, your financial planners, your estate planning attorneys, your insurance agents. Sometimes you're working with a lot of different professionals to help you maximize your wealth, or then all of a sudden you got to jump over. Now we got to go implement something because you know what? Alina and Mike brought us out a deal, which I just saw you all send out a deal literally this afternoon, Alina. Wait a minute, that's a deal that makes sense. We got to go implement on that. And then, next month is, oh my gosh, we just had a tremendous offer to sell our small business. What if? That's a scenario. So these are just all examples. In order to stay wealthy and to stay high net worth, Alina, given the massive amount of turmoil in the economic and social and political marketplaces today, kind of all of that as a holistic universe, high net worth families understand that maintaining your wealth, planning around your wealth is a constant virtuous cycle with these elements. And so any of these components of it can be stress tested at any time. It doesn't necessarily have to be a holistic stress test. It might just be certain elements, because wherever we're at today with our wealth, if you would just fast forward a mere 5 years, Alina, all of us, 5 years down the road, we're going to have some future financial world, whatever it's going to look like 5 years from now. And it's either going to be a very optimal financial world for those of us that, really understand and take this virtual family office, very, very seriously, are working with solid professional, consummate professionals like you and Mike are at Tempo Management Group, Alina. All of those things, we're either going to have a really optimal financial world, or we're just going to, maybe have financial security. Maybe if you're working in corporate America and you still have a pension plan, if you think Social Security is going to be there, you're going to be okay. It's just not optimal. You might not be fully living your best life. Or unfortunately, for like a lot of our fellow Americans, they're going to have financial insecurity, or worse yet, it's just plain and simply financial disaster. So it's going to be kind of one of those four outcomes for all of us 5 years from now, or pick any time frame you want to look into the future, but 5 years from now, and something is going to happen. Unfortunately, given the circumstances that we're really all faced with today, there's just a natural drift to financial disaster and financial insecurity. And I've said it before, and I'll say it again. There's market, social, and political issues that are just going to cause a drift for most people that they just can't get out of the cycle. And they're going to drift to financial disaster, financial insecurity. It's decisive action that you take to get yourself to a more optimized world. But most people don't do it, Alina, because they just think it's impossible to do, or they think it's too costly to do, it's too risky, or it's just plain and simply hard to do. All of which may be true. It's all a matter of what you think and what you believe, and who do you have around you to actually help you get to whatever level of optimization you feel like you deserve to have and that you're called to do. So, we believe here at Mile Marker Club, Alina, that we can jump the lines, so to speak, because, we've got great relationships with people like you and Mike. We've got great relationships with deal sponsors that understands the needs of the high net worth families. So we have access. So we think that's jumping the lines a little bit. We have access to the right people and smart people like you that know how to run real estate and private real estate investment funds. Riding the curve is one thing, but riding the curve, as long as you're on the right curve, is not a bad thing. But we think accelerating it, given this massive tumultuous change and turmoil happening right now, is really, really critical. And that's where this optimization test, or, stress testing your portfolio, Alina, is really critical to drive to your optimal financial world. And realizing every one of us have a different optimal financial world, because all of our values are a little different. Our goals that we're looking for are different. Our current knowledge, about different opportunities are all different. But this idea of getting to an optimal financial world and staying optimized requires that type of stress testing or having an optimization test on different elements of your portfolio to get there. And once you do that and then develop the processes and systems to do that, your chances of, or your probability of staying optimized on your terms to truly live your best life of significance increases dramatically. And that's just what we have found in 20 years of working with high net worth families, and having the privilege of working with high net worth families, having the privilege of working with other professionals like you, Alina, and like Mike, and so many of our other friends in the private real estate network, our network of professional tax advisors and estate planning attorneys that really understand the needs. Those are all part of running an optimization test, to knowing and seeing where your opportunities lie at, your missed opportunities perhaps, and correcting some problems that you might have in your portfolio as well, or challenges or issues before they become big problems and wealth destroyers. So Alina, I'll pause here if that's okay right now, and I'll stop sharing my screen here and turn it back over to you.
Ryan, I mean, wow, this is just absolutely amazing. It's incredible content. Thank you so much for sharing. It was really amazing how you uncovered all these potential risks that many folks don't really know about, and what's even worse, don't know about how to mitigate and how to attend to these risks. So yeah, I'll start with some questions, and
Sure.
if you need to take a sip of water, I can wait a couple of minutes.
Sure, go ahead.
But so when someone is in a position where they have accumulated certain wealth, and they want to find a way to better manage it, but let's say at this point, like most folks, they probably have a CPA, maybe an attorney that they worked with to protect their assets, but a CPA. And now when they have, say, 5 or even 10 million, they probably need more than just CPA, and maybe not just not asset attorney, but maybe a tax attorney or someone with broader knowledge. So how do these folks go about switching to other professionals, or maybe adding more? Like, what would be the next steps for them?
Yeah, that is a great question, and really a great observation, Alina, because I know a lot of your clients that you serve, find themselves in that, and it's like they're getting they're hearing on whatever issue or situation that's kind of on the top of their mind. Their attorneys telling them this thing, their accountants telling them this thing, their bankers telling them this thing, and their insurance agent is telling, whatever the case might be, they're just getting all of this. And the fundamental reason that occurs, Alina, is because they don't have the family, the investor of that size, like you just said, a $5 to $10 million net worth family, doesn't have what I call a personal CFO sitting on the same side of the table as them, helping them think through, look at, understand implications of, and really then that can speak the language to their other professional advisors, be it at the accountant, be it the estate attorney, be it whoever it happens to be, about whatever their financial issue is. And so part of the biggest reason that, regardless of the size of the assets, it really has to do with understanding what are your core values as a family or as an investor, and what are your goals? Because most of us created our wealth, like I think a lot of your clients have, through their small businesses or more corporate America. We weren't taught how to speak tax to our tax advisors. We were just taught we need them. But once you ascend to a certain level of wealth, you need help coordinating all of those people, because they all touch your wealth in a different way. And it's not really their job, believe it or not, to understand your holistic picture. And they're not. They have specialized area of knowledge, and that's what you hire them to do. But they're not necessarily going to understand the holistic implications, which is why an example that you're talking about, Alina, is why having a virtual family office, having a personal CFO that understands those other needs and coordinating what we call your key financial professionals for you and with you helps increase the probability dramatically of getting to those outcomes and having those experts really maximized and optimized to what you're trying to do. So most of us have accountants, Alina, but a lot of times families come to us and go, oh, we realize we don't have the right account, but we can't find the right account. And of course, that's part of what we do to help serve our clients is put them in touch with other tax advisors and accountants that have really specialized knowledge of the high net worth families, particularly with alternative investments and real estate investments.
Excellent, thank you, Ryan. So in that case, when you put your clients in touch with these other professionals, whether it's CPAs or other advisors, does your team in particular work hand in hand with them when evaluating clients' financial position and stress testing it?
That's a great question, Alina. And we didn't practice this either. That's excellent, because that's the fundamentally one of the biggest issues for high net worth families is that, when our clients come to us, especially a new client, there's a lot of stuff going on. There's a lot more red in the progress chart than there is green, at least initially anyway. And being able to work with families, their other, advisors, their, whatever deal sponsors, accountants, just all those other professional trusted advisors that they have, we can do as much with those advisors or as little with those advisors as our client wants us to, or clients need us to, which changes and evolves over time. And so that's part of the overall discovery process that we have with our new families that are coming for us, is trying to understand how they want that to look and work and feel, to make sure it's all in harmony, so they're not feeling like, oh, I've got this information coming from that direction and then this information here, which looks to be complete opposite and conflicting information. We help sit right at the center of all of that and help quarterback it, help interpret it, but most importantly, communicate the values and the goals and the mission that our families and our clients want, to make sure those advisors are bringing their best, their A game, to that situation to maximize the probability of the outcomes that they're looking for.
Got it. Excellent. Thank you so much, Ryan. It makes total sense. So as you know, a lot of folks in Tampa community are dentists and physicians because of our affiliation with Freedom Founders.
Sure.
And a lot of these folks are going through the process where they either planning to sell their practice or sold their practice, and going through the steps of leveraging the money from the sale and building and strengthening their financial position. How do folks like that, whether they have medical practice or maybe entrepreneurs that sold their business, how do they decide in general when is the right time to hire a professional like yourself? Is it before the sale, during the sale, after, and so forth? When is that the right timing for them?
Yeah, that's very insightful that you asked that, because for all of us, and I think even for a lot of your clients and a lot of other deal sponsors that we know and work with too, Alina, is that we got into alternative investments, especially real estate, because we weren't following the conventional path. We knew we didn't want, necessarily 100% of our wealth in traditional stock market bonds types of things. And we've gotten into real estate, and it's done well for a lot of us. And so we've already started following, at whatever point in time we decided, traditional stocks, or at least all of our wealth in traditional stocks, was not the right answer. And so to your question or your point about when does a family, start to realize they need somebody like a personal CFO helping them, or really then even further elevating into the virtual family office infrastructure of what that can be? Really depends on what the mindset is that the family or the entrepreneur is dealing with, because regardless of what type of business you have, and regardless of when your anticipated liquidity event comes, there's a massive amount of planning and strategy that has to happen well outside the sale of the business itself. Okay. And so, when we are working with entrepreneurs, and, especially new entrepreneurs that are coming to us asking that question, one of the areas that we're really trying to understand is, well, is your business, whatever it is, I know you work with a lot of medical professionals, but whatever small business it is that makes up the bulk of business in this country, are small business owners. Is it the right time to sell the business? Do you want to sell the business? Are you still enjoying the business? Or is the business part of your family legacy that's going to, transfer on? So these are all very normal things that any entrepreneur of any business in any industry needs to ask themselves, because regardless of the answer, there's strategy and techniques that need to be utilized. And what we find a lot when entrepreneurs are keeping their business, even if they've got a relatively good runway to still keep running the business, we often find the business as an asset itself is horribly underutilized. Not that they're not running the business at peak optimization. They're just not using the tax code to their advantage. They're not using other types of creative alternative types of deal structures that the business, just given the tax laws in this country, allow for. So I'm not talking about things that aren't legal. I'm not talking about things that are shady or questionable. I'm just talking about knowing how to use the existing laws to your financial benefit. And so we see that with entrepreneurs all the time. They're just not maximizing their business. And I'm not talking about 401k plans or SEP IRA. I'm not talking about any of that at all. There's a lot of other creative structures that can work that business owners just simply aren't utilizing. Then to your other part of your question, Alina, if say an entrepreneur is getting ready to liquidate their business, and they're either going to go start a new business, or that's going to create, a massive amount of wealth that, they can, live their best life. And as I like to say, keeping work optional, which is a big motto of ours over here at Mile Marker Club, is to be able to look at that. And all of a sudden, when you have that massive liquidity event, once again, when you understand that whole virtuous cycle, wealth protection, charitable giving, wealth legacy, and you integrate all those together, you can wildly maximize the impact of that liquidity event at levels most entrepreneurs never get to, because they don't have the full professional network in place. They don't have a personal CFO in place. They don't have the cycle and the processes in place to even identify where to begin to how to see that. And so it's really looking at your business as an asset to further fulfill your life of significance, beyond just the business that you love and wake up to do every day to serve whoever your customers of that business are. And it's hard sometimes as entrepreneurs, because we're generally servants by nature. It's why we are entrepreneurs, that we're serving our customers. And we oftentimes forget that we need to be serving ourselves first and really taking care of ourselves so that we can better take care of others and more people. So, usually in either of those situations, as you phrased it, Alina, you find yourself with that amount of assets, or you just find yourself with more complexity in your financial situation, that you go, I can't deal with all this. And it's not the accountant's issues to solve. It's not the attorney's issues to solve. It's not the insurance agent's issue to solve. It's not the banker. It's not their deal sponsors. that's what the role of a personal CFO is to help sit at the center with you and help see and think through all things related to your treasury and your finances. So I hope that is kind of a long explanation, but I hope that provides some clarity around, at least how families that we serve have found themselves making that decision when it's time to introduce that type of professional into their network.
Yeah, no, absolutely, Ryan. Thank you so much for such detailed answer. It definitely was very, very helpful. You mentioned earlier, you compared your position more or less with the quarterback, and I actually had to look it up because I'm not a football player, but the quarterback is someone who directs and leads. And as someone who directs and leads, people are obviously more familiar with quarterbacks than with wealth strategists, virtual CFOs. And I think it's very important. And a lot of folks that come to us, our community in Tampa, also bring similar questions and issues as to they want to invest, but they start asking these questions that are wealth related, tax related, legacy related. And I have to always tell them that, I'm not in an advisory role. I'm here to serve you from a real estate investment position, but we're not the advisors. So, and we always thrilled to recommend you and your services. Folks that we know that use your services are extremely, extremely happy. And that's why we always try to recommend it. But in general, how can we and other professionals that work with experts like you, how can we bring awareness to the community around us to have them a better understanding? Why is it essential to have the quarterback among their professionals and reach out early so that there is someone like that who can lead them and make sure that they are directed through that offensive game of the team, if you will.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, just what you're doing, Alina, right now, and having a discussion about this just continues to bring awareness, because in the world of alternative investments, and obviously real estate is near and dear to all of our hearts here, myself very much included too, is that, when you look back on it, the internet itself isn't that old. I mean, it's 20 years kind of in the making and less than 10 years since the Jobs Act. And, it's all thought that, the internet, and it did, and it has just brought this wealth of information and knowledge to the marketplace to make it easier for us as real estate, private alternative real estate investors, so much easier to access just a massive amount of deals. Then the Jobs Act further opened that up to how deal sponsors like you and Mike, can find accredited investors today. It's been wonderful. The flip side to all of that is that there's now so much information, knowledge is so, freely shared, and not all of which is good necessarily, is that it can create confusion in the mind of the high net worth investor. And a confused mind will always say no.
Absolutely.
Every time. And so when you're getting bombarded with all of this information, let's say from wherever you're getting it from, and you hear, oh, this idea is really good, or that idea, or that technique, or that IRA, or that fund, or that open-end, or that closed-end, or this and that, and you go, wow, all of that's really cool, but what should I do? A decision still has to be made of what of all of that is for you. And remember, being able to, and again, I just come from the standpoint, Alina, I know what our lane is. I know what we run in really well, and I know who we run in it with. Our families that we serve are already wildly successful, and they want to stay that way. And they're also very much understand they cannot do it alone. And the more information that comes, the more complex the alternative deals are, the real estate structures are, the more it's like, put the brakes on. I don't know what I'm looking at here. I don't know what I'm doing. I need somebody who's sitting on the same side of the table with me that has no other interest but mine to look at this deal and understand what it means to that overall virtual cycle and the implications to my overall virtual family office that is driven by my values and my goals. And that's where this being able to talk about this and understand this, because frankly, this is exactly why the traditional financial planning industry can't help your clients. It can't help our clients. It doesn't serve you and it doesn't serve me, because they are confused about the role and the power that alternative investments and real estate investments bring to the overall plan. And so, unfortunately, the surroundings around us have told us it can't be done. But when you've chosen to follow, a little bit of an unconventional path, as I think most of your investors have, by the virtue of them being entrepreneurs already investing in alternatives and real estate, they look very closely and realize they can't do it all on their own. There's portions of it that they do want to do. They do that well, and it's perfectly fine. They don't need help with that. When you're realizing there's so much more to your wealth than just the investments. While that's a big thing, being able to understand how you make the different investment selections you do becomes a lot clearer when you have the formality of an investment policy and guardrails in place, and much more clarity around the types of deals you invest in. It makes it a much more enjoyable existence when you're managing your wealth yourself. And ultimately, and I say it that way, Alina, because just like my book that I wrote, Your Money CEO, we believe our clients are the CEO of their wealth. They're making the decisions. They are the one in charge. No one has more interest in their wealth than they do. But if you think about it in a business setting, you've got the CEO, and your number two right by your side is your CFO. And we believe that that's the same way for the high net worth families, that you need that person or that team thinking like you, understanding your values and goals, being pretty down deep into the weeds with you to help you make good, solid, long-term decisions over the long term. Because it's never about what you just do in the short term. It's how you do a lot of things well over the long term, because the markets will change on you and you need to be ready for it.
Absolutely. Thank you, Ryan. It's just, wow, absolutely amazing content and great feedback. Really grateful for that. I don't see any more questions, but I do have one last very important question. How can our audience find you and reach out to you? What is the best way?
I appreciate that, Alina. We so enjoy working with you and Mike and Yuri N and Yuri G over there. And I know we've had a long relationship with each other here. So I am happy for your listeners. If it's okay, Alina, I'm just going to put
absolutely
is my personal text number. Hopefully I just share that.
You did, but then it disappeared.
And it disappeared. There it is. Hopefully it's there. Any of your clients, Alina, that would like to talk more about this optimization test and do some initial stress testing, please just text me. You can see my number there, 480-284-4806. That comes directly to me here on my cell phone. It's just to me, and I offer that just to your clients and your listeners, Alina. So anyone that we can help serve and just have start a conversation with, we're more than happy to.
Thank you so much, Ryan. This has been absolutely amazing presentation. Really enjoyed it. And I'm sure you're going to have a lot of follow-ups after that. People are going to reach out after this. Thank you so much again for presenting.
It's my pleasure. Thanks for having me. Always glad to be here with you.
Thank you. Thank you. And have a good night, everyone. Bye. Take care.